Hey you guys, it's Peter and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the TV shows and I watch a lot of true crime over here. I love to watch true crime. I love to watch documentaries of any kind. And today I want to talk about a very, very important documentary that I just watched last night. And that documentary is called The Alabama Solution. Okay, this documentary has been on my list for quite some time. I think probably the last month it's been on my list. And so many people have reached out to me and asked me to watch it and to react to it and what did I think about it. And in all honesty, like I would start watching it and it just was so sad from the very beginning that I just was like, okay, like every night that I would go in to watch it, I'm like, I'm just not in the mood for this tonight. I'm just not in the mood for this tonight. And so last night I was like, you got to watch this documentary. You got to watch it. So I had started it, I don't know, 3 or 4 different times. So last night I restarted it. And I watched it in one setting, made a cup of coffee. I think it's like an hour and 55 minutes. Sat right there, watched it in the entire, I think I took my dogs out one time in the middle of it and watched the whole thing and was absolutely, absolutely blown away. So let me give you a little bit of a synopsis and I'll kind of lead you into this. Anything that I'm going to say, I want to say this because, I usually give like spoiler, warnings and things like that. Anything that I say about this documentary will not ruin the documentary for you, okay? The documentary is not about gotcha moments or surprises. It's not like The Perfect Neighbor and you don't know what's going to happen. It's not like, Unknown Caller and you find out it's the mother. It's nothing like that. It is literally an inside perspective of what's going on in the Alabama Department of Corrections. And it is riveting, it is profound, it is important because it could be happening to someone that you love, someone that you know, in a Department of Corrections anywhere near you. Because at the very end of it, they show footage from different prisons around the country. And that was like, that part at the very end was like, and so I'll get to that in just a second. But let me read you the synopsis really quick. The Alabama Solution is a 2025 American documentary film directed by Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman. It follows the prison system in Alabama from the perspective of incarcerated leaders. Now, I believe that Andrew Jarecki, hold on a second. I believe he's the one that did the Janks. Yes, he was. He was the one that directed the Janks and the Janks 2, which were fantastically done. I don't think that I did a review of those over here because I believe that I watched them before I started this channel. A lot of people ask me, they'll be like, will you review this documentary? I've watched so many. I love documentaries. I love specifically true crime documentaries, but just documentaries in general. The Wonderful Wild Whites of West Virginia is probably one of my favorite documentaries. I mean, it's not true crime. So I will watch anything. But a lot of people ask me to review and react to documentaries that I watched like 5 or 6 years ago. And I've thought about rewatching some of them, like The Keepers is one of my favorite documentaries. Making of a Murderer is one of my favorite documentaries. I would maybe watch those again. The Wonderful, I should probably watch The Whites of West Virginia again because I haven't watched that in so long. Maybe I'll do that tonight. Maybe I'll do that tonight and I'll react to it tomorrow. It's just so well done as an observation of a family. So anyway, I went into this documentary. I didn't really know a lot about it when I went into it. Now, I think I probably need to share this with you before I get into this because maybe my perspective will be a little bit different. I have been sober for 30 years as of December 17th, 1994. That's my sobriety birth date. If I should make it to this December 17th, we don't borrow time in recovery, I'll have 31 years of sobriety. I used to work in a treatment facility. I was a liaison for a long time. I did assessments between the treatment facility and the Department of Corrections. For many, many years, I worked with probation officers, parole officers, judges. I went into Department of Corrections. I went into different, systems and did assessments on people. So I'm really well versed in this. Plus, I've had so many friends of mine that have done time in prison. I have done time in county jail, that have done time in prison systems, that have done time in jail, that have done time that are in work release. I have a lot of friends of mine right now that are on work release programs, that are in drug court programs. So a lot of the things that I saw and I witnessed in this documentary weren't necessarily surprising to me because I had heard of these things happening before. Like I said, I've watched a lot of true crime, and a lot of these things are shown in other true crime documentaries. I think it was, for me, the level of severity and the level of force and severity that when I saw that, so what it is, okay, when I saw the level of severity that was going on, specifically in the Alabama Department of Corrections, and the fact that the Alabama government, I don't know why this is surprising to me. It shouldn't be. But that the Alabama, legislature and the Department of Justice, are really willing to do absolutely nothing when these people or these men are being treated absolutely inhumanely. I mean, it is unbelievable to me. And at the end of it, they shared that since the Department of Justice did their investigation, that 1,000 men have died, died in the Alabama Department of Corrections since in the last year. In 1 year, 1,000 men. I think it had been maybe 1 or 2 years since the Department of Justice had come in and done an investigation and decided that they were not going to get involved, that they were going to leave it to the governor of Alabama, who her decision at the time, Kay Ivey, I believe is her name, was that she was going to build more prisons. So what we needed was, we didn't need prison reform, which I'm a big believer in prison reform. We didn't need prison reform, okay? We didn't need to hire educated people to work within the system. We needed to make bigger prisons, because what they show in there is, they basically call them slave camps. A lot of the men in there talk about that it's like, that they're prison slave camps. These men are forced to work. They are forced to work in these prison systems to put out, I believe it's something like $450 million worth a year in products. Many of them are working for other corporations. Many of them are working out in the community, even though I think the rate of parole has declined by 76% in the last 5 years. None of these men are being paroled, but they are all working. At one point, they attempt, because they want to do nonviolent protesting. So what they do is they say, we're going to all go on a strike. They coordinate, I think it's like 10 prisons within the state of Alabama, 7 to 10 prisons that they coordinate to go on a work strike, okay? So then they come in and they start taking away their food. They come in and they start taking away their visitation rights. And so one by one, each of the prisons kind of breaks down and the strike falls apart. But they weren't even trying to retaliate in a violent manner. They were trying to retaliate in a peaceful protest just so that they could be treated like human beings. And when you watch the documentary, what's interesting is most of the men are like, yes, I need to be here. I deserve to be here. I did something wrong. I own that 100%. I still deserve to be treated like a human being. What is so sickening is you hear a lot of news coverage, a lot of they in the background, they'll play a lot of radio clips of people being like, well, what did you think was going to happen? You broke the law and you're in prison and you want to complain about your rights. It is so disgusting how these men are treated. There is literally blood and feces all over the floor. There's water coming down. I mean, it is unbelievable. So what they do is they have several men that have confiscated cell phones, and they record what's going on. I think it's over a period of 10 years. Over a period of 10 years, they record what's going on within the prison systems. Now, what's important about this, okay, is that the men in prison, it's contraband to have phones. I think we all know that if you've ever watched any kind of true crime or thriller movie or whatever. You're not allowed to have a cell phone in prison, right? In fact, at that time, the state of Alabama, it was huge news stories that what they were doing was they were trying to really break down on inmates having cell phones. And they were even trying to around the prison systems make it so that they couldn't have any service. So even if they had a cell phone, the service wouldn't go out. Well, what they found out was that it wasn't because they just didn't want them to have communication with the outside world. What they didn't want was videos and pictures getting outside of what was really going on within the prison systems. That's what the state of Alabama was really afraid of. So these men have these confiscated cell phones that they are recording themselves on, doing voice calls with the producers of this documentary. They are taking pictures and taking videos of these guards beating people and the conditions inside, people dying of overdoses, people being dead in their hospital beds. I mean, it is unbelievable when you watch this. Absolutely unbelievable. And the thing that I think, okay, is, having started using drugs when I was 12 years old, or drinking when I was 12 years old and using drugs later, getting sober when I was 22 and a half, having done my, time in jail as well. And then not prison time, but county time and short stints. But anyway, but having friends of mine that have gone to prison for drugs and other things like that, this could be anybody that you absolutely love, anybody that you care about. It could be you. It could be anybody. It could be your neighbor. It could be your grandchild. And then to stand back and just be they deserve to be this way. This one man, okay, that was the roommate of this guy that gets killed is so afraid to come forward And so he keeps on telling people, I'm not saying anything until I get out of here, because he's getting out in February. And so he's counting down the days. It's like, when they interview him, it's like October or November. So he has like 4 months. And he says to his cellmate, because his mom, so this guy, Steven, is beat to death in prison. So his mom is a big part of it, because she's trying to find out what happened to her son. His cellmate is the only one. Everybody else collaborates the story of what happened to him, and these guards beat him unbelievably, okay? And they didn't have to. That he threw down his plastic knives, which they considered weapons, and all this kind of stuff. And that they didn't have to beat him. The only person that doesn't collaborate that story is his cellmate, who you can tell is so scared for his life. Well, he ends up being killed the month before. He's bleeding out of his rectum and bleeding out of his mouth. And they said that he died of natural causes. He was getting out in a month. Well, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to add up that he was terrified, because he wanted to get out and share what he was telling everybody. When I get out, I'm going to talk to his mom. I'm going to tell her what really happened. I won't lie. And he's killed a month before he gets out of prison, and he was a model citizen, or a model inmate in prison. Model inmate. Didn't never cause any problems. And then the attorney that's working for the mother, he shares that the guy was incarcerated, put 15 years, okay, in a maximum security prison, one of the hardest prisons in Alabama, for breaking and entering into an abandoned building, and didn't even take anything. The movie goes in and addresses systematic racism, and it discusses racism from the point of view of people feeling like they deserve it a lot. But one of the things that that they do in the movie is that you see the inmates, which you don't hear a lot about this in prison documentaries and true crime documentaries, is that notwithstanding their race, they all unify together to try to come against, like, getting the truth out there of what's going on. And they decide that they're not going to retaliate. I mean, they have discussions about not retaliating in a violent manner. It is so sad when you watch this documentary. This one man is kept in solitary confinement for years because they don't want him to be vocal about what's going on. And their response to this, instead of prison reform, or educating wardens, or educating correctional officers, or hiring better grades of correctional officers, because what they go in there and talk about is they don't have enough correctional officers for the amount of men that they have in these programs. It's to build bigger prisons, okay? Well, the only reason for that can be is if you build bigger prisons, because what the inmates figure out is if we don't work and we go on a work strike, then we are hitting them where it counts, which is where their money is. So we've got to hit them where their money is. So we will just strike and we will not work. And it does hit them where their money is. And that's when they decide that the response to that is going to be, we're just going to build we're going to build a mega prison, which doesn't even make sense about the concerns that they have. So none of the men are being listened to anyway. It is so sad, and it is so baffling. The prisons cost, by the end of it, they estimate $900 million to build these new prisons, $1 billion, and they want to take $100 million of it out of education. This is going on right now in the state of Alabama, okay? Right now they're building these prisons. $100 million they want to take for education. They don't care about prison reform. They don't care about treating these human beings correctly. One of the things they show is that many of these inmates are working out in the community. They're working at zoos. They're working at picking up trash. They're working at, they're doing all these things. They're interacting with the community, but they are refused parole. Why? If they're so safe to be out in the community, then shouldn't that be somebody that has been up for parole 4 times and has served 30 years in prison? Maybe be granted. I mean, this one guy even says, I understand that a lot of us out there should not be granted parole because we are a danger to community. But you have people working in the community that obviously are safe enough to go out there and work for free. They don't make anything. They even show that the governor, she herself has landscapers that are working at her mansion that are being paid absolutely nothing, but will not be granted parole. So it's this whole skewed system. The documentary, you can see how passionate I am about talking about this. I'm such a believer in prison reform. And what they talk about is that they have these amendments where journalists and media cannot go into prison systems. They showed this at the very beginning. Because if they do, then they don't want them to expose what's really going on. So journalists and media are they are never allowed into prison systems. So these men had to hide these cell phones. They risked their own safety. Many of them, the men that are interviewed through this, are beaten horribly throughout the documentary, okay? Put in solitary confinement for months on end, mistreated horribly, and they are doing that at the expense of trying to get the truth out there. Many of them will never see the light of day again and will never be out of prison, will never get paroled. They don't ever think they will get paroled. The one guy at the end, who's the one that's talking the most about it, He shows that he has to hang his food on the door because if he doesn't, the rats will get it if he puts it on the floor. And then he shows that in one day, he has caught 11 rats. Okay, and I know that there are people out there that are like, well, they deserve it, they're inmates. Do they, though? I mean, when you watch this, there is no way to shy away from this is happening in the grand old United States of America, and this is how we are treating the people of the United States of America. We're not talking about every one of them being serial killers or murdering your children, okay? We're talking about many of these people being in there that could be your children. Many of these people out there that could be your siblings or one of your best friends. We're not talking about them trying to, I mean, they asked this one senator over and over and over again, do you believe in, like, that they could be like, that they could change, they become better people. And he's like, well, you're talking about the difference between, and it's all this religious mumbo jumbo about, you're talking about the difference between grace and all this kind of stuff. They don't believe in rehabilitation. Well, that's the whole idea behind the Department of Corrections in our country anyway, is rehabilitation. When you talk about punitive damages, rehabilitation is a huge part of that when you look at why the Department of Corrections exists anyway. This one guy says, I mean, it's baffling. They have this like town meeting thing, and he says, we can't execute everybody. Obviously, you're going to execute somebody for going into an abandoned building, not taking anything. Who knows? Maybe he had no place to stay and that was the only place that he could stay for the night. Nobody knows why he went in there. They don't share that story, but he ends up dead. Why? Because it looks like the Department of Corrections is greatly threatened by him. The documentary is so unbelievable and so sad. None of these family members of the inmates that have died really get any justice. They don't even really find out any truth, and the inmates are stuck in there. But they are willing to risk their safety, their lives, just to get the truth out there. And it is such a powerful documentary. I would recommend it to anybody. If you've watched it, please let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.